Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast here, Rytos, to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm sick as hell. So you're getting peak, comfy, cozy Rytos today. Expect frequent cuts for me to blow my nose and drink some tea and things like that, because I've got my ghost mug with some loose leaf tea going on. I just took a shower, as you can see, so my sinuses are mostly clear. I got Dayquil in my system, tissues off to the side. I've got a head cold, let me tell you that. Oh boy, like the most stereotypical, standardized head cold possible. That's what I got. Ding, ding, ding. Winner, winner. It's funny, when I worked a desk job, I used to love getting sick because it was like, oh, fuck yeah, I get to work from home, answer emails, and don't have to take any calls. This is huge. But like, now that I work this for a living, which is like way better than my desk job and way more fun, it's the opposite where I'm like, oh, I'm sick. The next 3 days are going to suck, essentially. And it always happens. I wish I could get sick on a Thursday every single time. But I feel like I always get sick on Sunday. And that sucks for me in particular because I record Monday and Tuesday. So this is what you get. I'm lucky that I recorded the audiobook like the day before I really got cold with this. So I was able to edit that. Audiobook's up right now, by the way. It was supposed to go up yesterday. Rydos kind of missed a week because of all the hectic stuff going on with the holidays. Luckily, it was just Etc. Podcast, which, I mean, is more of a passion project with me and my wife, and isn't really the reason most people watch Rydos, so, like, it's fine. We're just going to continue as scheduled. So, audiobooks this week, Etc. Podcast next week, compilation the week after, so on and so forth. There is big changes coming to Rydos, probably end of January, if I had to guess. I'm kind of kicking the can down the road just because I need time to edit it. But there's going to be a new series on Rydos of original content, something that not many people have asked for, but enough people asked for it, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. So I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. I finally have an excuse to do this. And as far as producing it, it's probably going to... I think as a rule, I would only have time to make it every other week. So I think to standardize Rydos' releases and try to maximize the content people give a shit about, what I'm probably going to end up doing is Monday is still going to be the major release day. That's when the compilations will come out. That's when the audiobooks will come out, so on and so forth. But I can't do... Here's the thing. The compilations get the most views on Rydos because people are interested in that the most. But obviously, like, I can't just do a compilation every week because I'm going to start reusing content really quickly. A compilation, I think, is 5 to 6 videos. And I make one video a week. So, like, you do the math. You know, if I make one every week, I'm going to run out of videos in 2 months. So, I have to pace them out. So, I still can only do a compilation every 4 weeks. So the way that I'm thinking of changing Rydos to be more worthwhile to the viewing experience, Monday is going to, instead of being compilation, etc., audiobook, etc., compilation, audiobook, long play. As far as what I mean by long play, I'm going to go through my streams, take games that took multiple streams, edit it down to one long video. Or like, say it's one game that it only took one stream, but it took the whole stream. That's the video, you know, like get the whole playthrough of a game and make it one video, go through. And I probably, realistically, won't edit out like the jump scares or the redeems and stuff, because it's a lot of editing that I do not have time to do. But what I will do is I'll put it through Audition and I'll have it cut the audio levels at a certain range. So like, say my speaking volume is at this volume, which is like looking at the monitor, like negative 15 decibels. Say jump scares are -5, you know, that huge loud, or like -1, they're super massive loud. I can put it into Audition, take the audio and say, cut anything higher than like negative 10 decibels. So that way the jump scares will still be there, but they'll be quiet. So that's the hope. And then audiobook, right? So Monday will now, moving forward, when I make this change, probably late July or late January, maybe early February, depending on when I can get this new series of content going. It'll be, if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, Ride-Doze is my third channel. It's where long-form content stays. So compilation, audiobook, long play, audiobook. And that'll be the rotation. So, one, people have been asking for more audiobooks. Obviously, like, there's so many short stories. If I release one every 4 weeks, we're going to be here for 6 years before I even catch up to the end of Tales from the Pizzaplex, let alone the novels, the books coming out in that time, you know? Whereas if I do every other week, we might actually, you know, catch up relatively soon. And when we do, I don't know, we'll figure something out. But compilation audiobook, long play audiobook. And people will say, well, what about the Etc. podcast? That's where a deviation will happen. Right now, on any of the channels, I don't publish on Thursday. Not on purpose, it just ended up being that way. So what I'm thinking of doing is this new series I want to do. If I'm going to do it every other week, what probably makes the most sense is Monday, do what I said, and then on Thursday, Etc. podcast, new series. Etc. podcast, new series. So that'll be every other week. So there'll still be an Etc. podcast every other week. That's the podcast where me and my wife talk about whatever the hell we want to. We spin a wheel. We don't know what's going to happen until it happens. Has a lot of Reddit stories, some tier list stuff. And then in between that will be the new series. I'm not keeping it a secret for like NDA reasons. It's not out yet, so I don't want to jinx it by announcing it before like the first episode is edited. I've got like 4 episodes of footage. I just haven't had the time to sit down and edit it yet. But let me tell you, it's something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and it's something a lot of people have been asking me to do. Well, not a lot of people. Enough people have been asking me to do that I can warrant doing it. So that's the plan for Ride-Doze moving forward. Ride-Toost. Still doing that. I like I mentioned, everything with the holidays, and we had a stomach bug for like 3 days. I've got a cold now. So it's just been a really hectic December. So that's why Ride-Toost didn't get uploaded this past weekend. Expect that to continue probably starting in January. I'm probably going to skip this Saturday again, so skip 2 weeks total, just because that way I can get a backlog established. Because right now I'm out of a backlog, and that's because we were sick. So, but that'll back up to be every Saturday come January. So that's the plan moving forward. Obviously, the things that have highest priority are the main channel, Ride-Toast. It's what puts the most food on our table, and it's the thing that the most people enjoy. So that's the thing I always am going to prioritize is main channel video first and foremost, and then podcast, and then short, and then streams in that order, right? So if like worst case scenario, I get horribly sick, you know, okay, first priority, main channel video. Second priority, this podcast. Third priority, main channel short. Fourth priority, streams. Then we start talking about third channel content, second channel content, things like that. Not to mention the like voice acting stuff I'm doing on the side. I was doing a lot of comic dubs a couple months ago, and I want to get back into that, but man, this winter has kicked my ass. Between stomach bugs, colds, y'all know I was sick for like 3 months, and then just the hectic nature of the holidays, shit gets busy. I'm still the only writer, editor, and like producer on any of my channels. Like it's all just me. So like, when I get sick, everything stops. I'm planning to hire an editor, but it's a matter of like, I want to make enough to afford the editor. I guess it's more accurate to say I want to make enough to afford an editor on top of the bills that I already pay. But if I get an editor, it'll probably be for the second channel first, because that's just like, I think it's the easiest thing to edit. Like I don't think I would give the main channel editing over to someone else for a couple years yet. Like even if I start making just mega crazy money somehow, I probably still would be the editor for the main channel for a while, just to really get that. I don't know. You know, I really don't know. Because on one hand, it's like, it's my baby, so I want to take care of it and make sure it's done the way I want it to. But on the other hand, I'm not the best editor. I don't know if y'all have noticed this yet. Like, I know enough about editing to get by, but I'm not a good editor. So if I could improve the videos by hiring someone who's better than me at editing, that's probably for the best for everyone involved, including myself. So I don't know. I hope my plosives aren't too distracting. In my own ear, they're not too bad, but I actually didn't listen to the playback, so we'll find out, I guess. Anyway. It's been like 10 minutes. We're supposed to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. So you might be asking, right, what's the topic for today's video? This fuck-ass book. Now, before we say anything, this is, I'm going to criticize this book, but not because it's a bad book. When I tell you Return to the Pit is an excellent book, that is true. As a book, especially as a choose-your-own-adventure book, this is a wonderful time, well worth the price. Highly recommend you read it. It is a good book, period. That being said, some of this lore is insane. My notes page from going through the book. Holy. All right. So when we were talking about Return to the Pit was always in context of the rest of the interactive novel series. And part of that was, well, VIP and The Week Before seem to unambiguously be within the game's timeline. And they give us a lot of information about Security Breach and about FNAF 1, respectively, in really interesting and useful ways. We got so much incredibly useful lore from The Week Before. So when Return to the Pit came out, and we were like, okay, so far this book series is 2 for 2 for in-universe, lore-dense books about games, about things that happen in the game's timeline. And Return to the Pit gets announced. We're like, oh shit, okay. So this has got tripling down on Into the Pit being in the game's timeline, and this is finally going to fill in a lot of the missing gaps of information that we've been searching for. And then I read it. When I tell you, some of possibly the wildest lore drops are in this book. I'm not kidding you. So for anyone who doesn't remember the details for Into the Pit, Oswald, his kid, poor family, in a shitty town, and he goes to Jeff's Pizza that used to be a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. If he enters the ball pit, and he comes out of the ball pit in 1985 Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. In the original story, he does it a few times, and then one time he comes to like a chaotic scene, and like people are running and screaming, and he sees this yellow rabbit that's been staring at him every time he came, but this time the yellow rabbit beckons him to a back room and walks back. And Oswald follows him, sees 6 dead kids with party hats on, runs out and leaves. He comes out, his dad's like, what the hell were you doing in there? The yellow rabbit followed him out, grabs his dad, they wrestle. The yellow rabbit leaves the ball pit and is now acting as Oswald's dad. And Oswald has to follow along because this rabbit could kill him at any moment probably. So he goes to school, he gets some encouragement from his friend Gabrielle, runs back to the ball pit, finds his dad, but the yellow rabbit's there, they wrestle a bit. He knocks the yellow rabbit into the netting of the ball pit. It struggles and ends up hanging itself. After it's dead, his dad wakes up. They hug. They leave. Wild story. The game Into the Pit, pretty similar, except instead of just going the one time, the first time Oswald goes to 1985 Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, while he's there, it switches to that horrible moment. He sees the 6 dead kids. He leaves. His dad gets replaced. And then he takes 5 days at school to keep going back to that ball pit to look for his dad, and he's freeing a missing child each time he's there until eventually he does find his dad and they escape together. So, a little different in the games, but the same idea. This book has 2 plot lines because it's a choose-your-own-adventure book. I would say there's 2 major plot lines. Up until Oswald's dad gets kidnapped, pretty much the same for Into the Pit. There's some differences that we'll go into. Pretty much the same for Into the Pit. By the way, spoilers ahead. Even though I'm spoiling this, still recommend you read it. If you haven't read it yet and you get spoiled from this video, I'd still recommend you read it because as a choose your own adventure, there's so much shit in this book that like it's still very much worthwhile to read it a couple of times, even if you know what the ending and stuff is going to be. But let's be real, it's Into the Pit. We knew what the ending was going to be, right? But up until Oswald's dad gets replaced by the Yellow Rabbit, it's pretty much the same. Pretty much. Obviously excluding the choices you can make along the way, and we will get into those. But after Oswald's dad gets kidnapped and Oswald goes back to his house, sleeps the night, I'm pretty sure it's when he wakes up is when you get the choice. I had to find it. You wake up, your dad is still the Yellow Rabbit. You have a choice. You can follow the story, like the original story, and you just play along and get to school. Or you can, in that moment, be like, Mom, what the hell are you talking about? That's a rabbit. That's not my dad. And then you book it. You leave. That's where the main two plot lines of this book separate. Playing along gets you the story we know, right? He goes to school. He gets a pep talk. He goes to the ball pit after school. He like sneaks out from home. And then he finds his dad, wrestles the rabbit. They leave together. That's the original story. That's the story we know. Holy shit if you decide not to play along. So if you, in that moment, you wake up, you see the rabbit pretending to be your dad at your table, and you go, Mom, what the hell are you talking about? That's a Yellow Rabbit. You can say, you're all crazy, and you leave. So you run out into the front lawn. If you go next door, your neighbor's Chica, and then you get killed by the Yellow Rabbit before you can realize what's going on. Which does point to the idea of all of this being a hallucination, which we'll get into. But here's the craziest shit. If you just go, I'm going back to Jeff's Pizza right goddamn now. You start running down the street, and then on the way there, a car slams to a stop in front of you. Here, let me just read this verbatim. There's a loud screech, and you wheel around to see a car slamming to a stop in front of you. You stare at the driver, a man in his 40s or so. He looks somehow familiar. I mean, that's not unusual, since you know almost everyone in this town, but this is different somehow. He leans his head out the driver's side window and says, "Get in." So if you listen to this strange man and get in, you turn to look at the man, and he's just staring at you. He has blonde hair, receding a bit at the temples, and a weary expression, like a man who's traveled around the world a few times and not been happy with what he's seen. The way he's looking at you is unnerving, almost as unblinking as the rabbit, and you are so not down for any more unblinking nonsense. What, you ask? Maybe a bit more harshly than you intended, but who cares, really? Skip ahead. I heard the stories, but to see you, it's proof, isn't it? Evidence. Skipping ahead. Oz, man. It's me. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to spook you. No one calls you Oz. No one except... You look at that face. Lines, sunken cheeks, bags under the eyes, but beneath it all, that familiar look. That something else. That gut instinct. Chip? You say it, and you don't believe it. The man smiles. A tired smile, but a smile nonetheless. Yeah, man, it's me. Chip, from 1985. You're old now, you say. Chip smiles wide, and he laughs. So Chip and Mike are your two friends back in 1985 when you're time hopping. And Chip in the modern day stops you, finds you, and he's like, wait, Oz, it is you. So this is real. This is evidence. Like, this is happening. And you're like, huh? Because the reaction should be, you look just like that one kid I used to know. It gets more. It's not just time travel. Oswald turns to this 40-year-old Chip. Okay, this is weird, but the ball pit is like a time machine, and I've been going to your time all summer, but really it's been this time this whole time. Chip nods. He doesn't seem weirded out. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about the ball pit, but a lot of weird stuff happened back in 1985. And there was some strange time-jumping stuff, too. I didn't experience it personally, but it was kind of a crazy summer for us back then. An awful summer. Oswald turns to him. Other people time-jumped, you ask instead. A couple of kids in my time went back. Don't know if it was in the ball pit or something else, but yeah, it all makes sense. So then Oswald is like, holy shit, this is happening. And he tells him about the rabbit. And Chip nods along. He's like, you know about the rabbit? And Chip says, that rabbit's bad news. Trust me. We all know that. I totally believe it's done that. Not the first time it's time jumped either. No one's managed to destroy it. Not yet. Oz, I've put together a team to take down the rabbit once and for all. We've been waiting for it to appear in town again. and it looks like it's now or never. Will you join us and help us end it? We got the FNAF Avengers before GTA 6. So, the plot of this secondary plot line is you join Chip, you go back to this barn where him and a bunch of other adults are like gathering to fight back, and Gabrielle is there. Gabrielle is the new girl in town who like makes friends with Chip and tells him this like Greek myth story that encourages, not Chip, Oswald, that encourages Oswald to fight back. This book is positing that Gabrielle is Chip's daughter, who, if we do this plot line, he's too late to bring her to school on the first day, so instead, Gabrielle and Oswald meet at the barn where they're gathering weapons to fight back against the Yellow Rabbit. Here's the fucked thing. When you get there, and everyone's like, all right, you gotta meet our leader, he'll be able to help explain stuff. The leader comes out, and it's also the Yellow Rabbit. And if Oswald in that moment goes, guys, it's him, the rabbit, they lock him up for being crazy. And then the rabbit comes in later and kills him. If you just tell Gabrielle, like, I swear that's the rabbit, I don't know why they can't see it. And she's like, I can't see it. And he's like, no, I promise you it's the rabbit. Let's just play along and we'll try to expose it when the time is right. If you play along, everyone goes to Jeff's Pizza. They, weapons in hand, guns, barbed wire baseball bats, like crowbars, like they're ready to fuck shit up. They charge into Jeff's Pizza. Jeff's like, hey guys, what's going on? And Chip is like, get in the fucking kitchen. And Jeff's like, I'm out. And then they start storming, looking for this rabbit. Oswald runs to the ball pit. He's like, I gotta get my dad. Jumps in, finds like what he thinks is his dad. And he's like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. And then he looks back, and the leader, who is the Yellow Rabbit, bites Chip in half. Just like bites his head and like shoulders off. Chip falls down limp to the ground. Now everyone sees the rabbit, and a huge fight breaks out. Oswald's like, oh God. And in that moment, a stray bullet flies, hits Oswald in the chest, and Oswald dies. He gets shot and dies, which is crazy. So like, the big question is this technically possible in Into the Pit? Right? Because a lot of these choose your own adventure books, the reason they're so useful for lore isn't to say what actually happened, but to say what could have possibly happened if other decisions were made. It gives us information about what's actually going on here. That's the ideal for this scenario. I don't know. A lot of people saw this plotline and immediately said, this book is not canon to anything. It can't be. But what if it can? Stick with me here. This book seems to argue a lot for time travel actually being real. For example, Chip, 40 years later, but remembers Oswald. If you, in this book, go back in time and then leave the restaurant and exit to the street, the world suddenly jumps forward to your time, but you age with it. And Oswald is now like 40 years old. And your dad comes looking for you, and you're like, Dad, it's me. And he's like, who are you? You need to leave. This isn't funny. So you leave. And then Oswald, as like a 40-year-old, just sees this town put up missing posters for Oswald looking for him, and he's declared missing and never found. And Oswald, as a 40-year-old, just has to go live his life now. So all of this seems to be saying that the time travel aspect of Into the Pit is real. It's not an agony hallucination. All of this is actual, honest-to-goodness time travel. Or is it? Because there's a lot of agony shenanigans too. Like I mentioned, if you instead of playing along say, that's the Yellow Rabbit, and leave and try to get help from your neighbor, you open the door and instead of your neighbor, it's Chica. Which is weird. Why would Chica be in, like, here of all places? Or the fact that the Yellow Rabbit isn't just replacing your dad, but seemingly can replace any adult. Like it replaced the leader of the grown-up kids fighting back. And all these kids are like, yeah, time travel's real. We saw it. Some of our friends went back in time. It happened. What if none of this is real? What if this entire book is an agony hallucination being experienced by Oswald? Now, you might be saying, right, how could you say this entire book isn't real? Every time Oswald in any continuity has time traveled, as far as we know, he gets in the ball pit, he counts to 100, he comes out, he's time jumped. The same thing happens with this, where almost every time he enters the ball pit to time jump, it's shallow, he lays down in it, he counts to 100, he comes up, he's in a different time. But sometimes the ball pit is deep. Sometimes the ball pit is much deeper. And every time the ball pit is deeper, the rabbit is involved some way, except for the first time. Listen to what happens the first time Oswald jumps into the ball pit. There's no turning back now. Actually, you could totally turn back. It'd be super easy to do, but you're fueled by anger and you are determined. It's just a ball pit. What's the worst that can happen? You look over your shoulder one more time. Jeff is still in the kitchen, so you just go for it. And faster than you can think pink eye, you jump into that pit and fall into a pile of dusty, colorful plastic. And keep falling. And keep falling. You're familiar with the story of Alice in Wonderland. You know all about a crazy deep rabbit hole. You think maybe you're suddenly somehow in her story, because this pit doesn't seem to have a bottom. You start to freak out and throw your arms wide to slow your fall. You need to do something quick. Maybe you can swim back to the surface? You kick your legs behind you and pull with your arms. Your hands scramble to use the plastic balls as leverage to pull yourself up, but you push them down beside you instead. Your heart is racing now, your feet flailing, your hands grasping, and now you're worried you can't breathe. No, don't be stupid. You're not actually underwater. There is air in here. There is air. Slowly and painfully, you manage to swim back up through the balls. You get higher. The higher you get, the more confident you are. You can do this. You can do this. You have to do this. With a whoosh, you finally pop your head out of the pit. You take in a deep breath and close your eyes in relief. There suddenly seems to be a bottom under you, and you sit there trying to calm your speeding heart. Then he slowly senses something's different. He then looks around and finds out he's in the past. But now there's a bottom under him. I'm positing the only logical way to explain all the wackiness in this book is the first time Oswald enters the ball pit and the last time he leaves are the only times he interacts with the ball pit. He enters it, he gets overtaken by the agony inside that ball pit, and everything he experiences in that interim is his own hallucination. And then at the end, he gets out of it. Or he stays in it, who knows. But that, to me, the fact that every other time he's using this ball pit to time travel, it has a shallow bottom. He sits in it, he comes back up. But the first time he enters it, there's this weird, never-ending, bottomless death pit. That's him going under. I think everything else he experiences this is an agony-induced hallucination with the other spirits in this ball pit. That's why his neighbor is suddenly Chica. That's why he's able to, everything that happens is something his mind would think of, right? If he leaves, he ages. Maybe that's what happens when you do time travel. The kids he knew in the past appear in the future and they believe him. Of course his friends would believe him. You know, is that definitely what's going on here? No. I think it's what's going on here, but I wouldn't say there's any solid evidence to prove it, but there never is, right? There never is solid evidence to prove any of these theories. It's theories that you make based on what's in front of you. And frankly, I see there's two ways to look at this book. Either we accept it as a non-canon retelling that is a new take on it with new lore that doesn't actually affect the game or book timeline in any way, or my explanation, because what the hell else could it be? But I mentioned there's some other weird things that happen that should be talked about, and there are, so let's talk about them. Let me go through my note page. I think something important here, in one of these choices you can make, you can cause the yellow rabbit to spring lock and die way earlier in the story while you're still in the past, which is very interesting what happens. Right, because as far as we know, in any continuity we've seen, Oswald only defeats the Yellow Rabbit in the present day. And then once he does, it returns to just being a suit and his dad is back to normal. So okay, we kill the rabbit, the agony-induced thing going on ends. What happens if you do it in the past? And we get to see what happens. In one of the choices you can make, you can follow the Yellow Rabbit early. Before the day where everyone's freaking out, you can follow it way earlier than that. And at some point, it turns on you to attack. And you're like, oh God. Oh no, so you're following it back, and you're like, huh, I shouldn't be here. Or wait, do you turn away or does it attack you first? Yeah, you're following it and you're like, I don't know about this. And then you're going through the hallway. And then suddenly in the hallway, the rabbit turns around to attack at you. If you don't have a flashlight, you die. If you have the flashlight, you shine it in its eyes and it throws it back. And when it lands, spring locks get activated. It starts like doing the spring lock thing. It's shaking, it's juddering. It doesn't say spring locks, but it says you realize what's happened. It's been impaled on something. And I think the idea here is like you threw it back, it landed on something, and the spring locks start activating all over. So while that's happening, you're like, oh, it just lies there lifeless. You killed it. So when Oswald goes, I gotta get out of here, you go to leave, but the ball pit's gone. Instead of the ball pit that allows Oswald to time jump, there's a party area, quote, in its place is a small party area and a group of little kids celebrating a birthday at a table. There is a cake and plates, and the kids are all wearing party hats. If the yellow rabbit dies, happiest day happens. Is that not just FNAF 3? Right? The idea of like Springtrap dying and the happiest day coming through. This book involves the happiest day so much. Like, this is not the only time that, like, when the yellow rabbit dies, happiest day happens. There is an arcade machine. So the first time you enter the past, there's an arcade machine called 8-Bit Escape. And you can't access it on your first playthrough. It says, basically you need a golden token. To get this, you need to either pick easy mode and receive half of a golden token, or you need to find half of a golden token throughout the story. And then one of the endings allows you to get the other half. And if you get both halves, it says, you have a golden token now, start again, but keep that in your inventory. So if you start the story with this golden token, you get 8-Bit Escape, you play it. Suddenly, you are a pixelated version of yourself in a pixelated version of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And you're in this game. Anytime you die, you respawn at the beginning of this game. And you find a back room where there's 5 kids tied up. And we gotta get to this. Every time the rabbit's victims are brought up, it's 5 every single time, which we do have to talk about. But you see these kids tied up, and basically you're playing an arcade game where you're untying these kids and trying to save them. If you leave, everything dissolves and breaks, you respawn. That's not how you win. You win by getting these kids to a table, sitting them down, and serving them all cake. If you give all of the kids cake, let me get to that page. And the final piece of cake to the girl with curly hair. As you stand over the kids, as in unison they all dig into their slices and take a bite, you can't help but look over your shoulder at the rabbit again. You notice that instead it's stopped in place. Then it starts to convulse, like it's being electrocuted or something. It spasms and flinches and bounces in place. And right in front of you, it explodes into 1,000,000 pieces. You look up and the coast is clear, the kids are cheering, the word yay appears above their heads, and a giant blue winner appears. Suddenly, the world rushes around you again, like the colorful whoosh at the start of the game, and you find yourself standing in front of the arcade game again. But you look around, and you're back in Jeff's Pizza. You're not in the past. But Jeff's Pizza with old-fashioned arcade machines and a full furnished dining room with waiters, and Jeff is still there. He's kind of greasy, but he looks happy. And you realize that you're where the ball pit used to be. There's no ball pit anymore. Just colorful video games with a framed newspaper article with the headline, Kids Saved from Certain Death. Whole Town Rejoices. In 1985. And your dad comes up and your family was here to eat dinner. So to me, this is kind of like the secret ending for Into the Pit the game, where if you beat all the arcade machines, collect all the items, do all the dad stuff, and then beat the game, Jeff cleaned up his act, cleaned up the pizzeria, and like Jeff is happy, the restaurant is flourishing, and your family decides to stay here but start spending more time together. And like it's a happy ending for everyone. And even this book denotes it. It says achievement unlocked, secret ending. So not the canon ending, of course. But again, it seems like this is allowing us to prevent the missing child incident. Which again, like, is it time travel then? Or is this ending part of this agony hallucination? Is Oswald still in the ball pit? It's hard to say. It might legitimately be time travel, you know? and we're interacting with time travel through agony. Maybe, but then that opens so many weird doors. That's not even the weirdest part. Here's the weirdest part. The first time you're in the past, you can escape. You can leave through the back doors. And if you do, and you're in an alleyway, Oswald hears a voice saying, "Help me." And if he follows it, there's a cellar door on the outside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You open it, there's concrete stairs going down. He goes down, then you see her, or it. You stop on the third step down. About 5 more steps away, sitting in the shadow, you see a toy doll that resembles a little girl. She has red hair in pigtails, is wearing a red dress to match her hair. Her face, legs, and arms are bone white, and she has a blood red nose and crimson circles on her cheeks. Her entire appearance is unnerving. She is silent. "Hello," you call out. "Is anyone there?" Maybe the girl who owns the doll is trapped further in. "Please help me." The voice sounds like it's coming from the doll. The rabbit then attacks you. And you fall down the stairs, cracking your head against it. The rabbit is coming down to finish the job, and you hear the sound of laughter beside you, high-pitched giggling. You turn your head to look at the doll. She sits there perfectly still, but the laughter gets louder and louder. Her head suddenly snaps to look at you. The rabbit is there. It attacks. Huh? A couple thoughts, right? The description is similar to Circus Baby, but in a way is similar to Eleanor too, because Eleanor kind of looks similar to Circus Baby, in a way. We know from Fazbear Frights that Eleanor is involved with this ball pit, likely because they're both manifestations of agony. But we've never had a backstory for Eleanor. We still don't know where she comes from. She just is. So I take this as possibly an explanation that Eleanor is just another agony monster born out of this ball pit like the Yellow Rabbit is. Because this book does double and triple and quadruple and like five tuple down that the Yellow Rabbit is just an agony manifestation. Oswald mentions multiple times that he sees into this thing's mouth and there is no human inside of it. It is just the suit, which seems to be an agony manifestation, right? And I can only assume this ending is the book basically being like, hey, Eleanor also was created out of this ball pit. Because what in the fuck else could this possibly mean? It doesn't make any sense otherwise, at least as far as I'm concerned. What else in here? There's a lot of like interesting tidbits that would be good to bring up, right? Like, it mentions a few times. Now, here's something that I think helps my theory around Into the Pit. My theory previously being that Oswald is experiencing the memories of the missing child incident victims and trying to help them find peace within their memories. And there's a piece of info we get that helps to give us, to tell us that I think this is true, right? So if you approach the rabbit mascot early, he'll give you a party hat. And if you take it and put it on, we get this passage. You put on the hat, placing the elastic around your chin, feeling it dig into your skin. You start to feel even more dizzy. The room is kind of spinning now, and you find it hard to stay standing, like you've spun very fast in a circle and then stopped. That strange numb feeling you were feeling is now all kind of floaty. It's even more dreamlike, but also different. Like you aren't even you asleep dreaming. More like you're in someone else's dream, observing it from far away. You don't feel like Oswald. You don't even feel like a person, really. To me, that's really solid evidence for the theory that all Oswald is doing is living through the memories of the missing child incident victims. He's not actually traveling through the past. He's seeing their memories and helping them find peace within it. Which, again, that was my theory. So I'm happy that this seems to support it. But at the end of it, just a weird book, right? Just a weird book with a lot of weird lore in it. And again, none of these statements are a criticism on the book. The book itself really well written. I love choose your own adventure novels. I had such a blast reading through this. So I don't want anyone to take this podcast and be like, Ritos thinks the book's bad. This book is great. Who wrote this? Adrian Kress? Adrian Kress, you knocked it out of the park. This book is amazing, and thank you for giving it to us and dealing with the weirdness of FNAF lore in the best way you could have. Like, I still think The Week Before is my favorite FNAF book. You just got second place. That's pretty good praise. I mean, it's my second favorite FNAF book. You know what I mean? If you're watching this. I don't know if you would be. Or at least if you started it, I don't think you would have made it 40 minutes and I spent the first 10 minutes talking about how I'm sick. What else could I talk about here? Oh, yeah, something gets brought up a couple times. And that's this empty well metaphor, which I thought was very interesting because it gets repeated, which makes me think it's important. We hear this passage a couple times. So you're a rabbit, huh? It's a pretty stupid thing to say, but you're feeling kind of stupid. Kind of numb, honestly. Like there's this empty well inside you, but you're also inside it. And that gets said a couple times, something along those lines. And to me, this is what started to get me thinking that all of this was a hallucination ever since he first enters the ball pit. The idea that, like, he's empty, but he's inside of this emptiness. It's either... Because I always had been thinking that he's not traveling to the past, he lays down in the ball pit and he has these visions while he's in the ball pit, and then he leaves and he's still in the present day. But so much weirdness happens in the present day that I really think the moment he enters that ball pit, he begins to have these weird visions and hallucinations until he leaves. Which is why the yellow rabbit seems to be able to swap who it's copying. Which is why the only person that sees it is Oswald. Which is why his neighbor is Chica. Which is why what he thinks time travel is really happens. Oh my god, I didn't even talk about one of the weirdest parts. There's a couple times, so you get these bunny ears, and you can bring them back to the present. And there's a couple times that the book prompts you, like, hey, do you want to put the rabbit ears on? And you can. This is what happens if you put the rabbit ears on. I'm going to read this verbatim. You feel a little silly doing this. You made a decision, you might as well try it. Here goes. Quite literally nothing. You put them on and feel stupid. Really, really stupid. The idea was maybe if you put them on, the yellow rabbit will like you more. Something sharp on each side of the plastic band, just by the top of your ears, suddenly pierces into your skull, clamping on it hard. It's shocking and sudden, and you should cry out in pain. But for some reason, you feel actually quite relaxed. Really relaxed. Super relaxed. It's like the stabbing into your flesh is a welcoming feeling. Something you realize that you've always needed, and now finally have. You feel good. You feel very bunny. You are one with being a bunny. Yes. Yes, this is right. This is good. You get up and cross your room, floating almost like you're on a cloud of contentment. You go downstairs and sit at the table with Mom and the rabbit, who have already started eating dinner. You smile at them. Mom is wearing bunny ears too, and she smiles at you. And the rabbit, well, it can't exactly smile back, but you sense that it is smiling, somewhere inside that costume. You are a family. A happy little bunny family. This is the beginning of the rest of your life. What? Huh? So, like, what could this possibly... How could this possibly make any sense unless all of this is a hallucination? In the lore that we have established, right? Like, in the lore that we have established, how could this make any goddamn sense unless it's all a hallucination? Which is why I keep going to that explanation for this book. But speaking of everything being weird, there is, like I mentioned, this book repeatedly says there are 5 dead kids. 5 dead kids. To the point where at some point, he's having this, like, spiral at school where he keeps thinking about it and keeps thinking about everything that's going on. And he goes, those animal band characters are now real. Even if they're not, like, real, you saw them. You time traveled. Kids watched them play their little animatronic song. 5 dead kids in a storage room. Heads lolling to the side. Empty, dead eyes. So, like, typically, that'd be like, hell yeah, cool. That's what we all assumed missing child incident was 5 dead kids. That's what the FNAF 1 newspapers say. But Into the Pit, the story, says half a dozen. And Into the Pit, the game, not only seemingly shows us 6 with that image we get when the door opens, but if you play the party hat game, you can collect 5 and then go out of bounds to collect a secret 6th hat. So the Into the Pit game and the Into the Pit story both are like, hey, it was actually 6 kids. There was a secret 6th victim of the missing child incident. Now, is that Charlie being roped in? Is that Andrew? That's where the debate comes in. Then Return of the Pit comes out. It's like, nah, it's 5. You guys are stupid. What? So, again, maybe this book is just its own continuity, which the thing that stinks about that, if that's true, so far, you could have made a safe assumption that all of the interactive novels are going to be game timeline in continuity, because VIP and the week before seemingly were, and the week before's back in the book was like, this book is a prequel to FNAF 1, just straight up. So like when Return to the Pit was coming out, I was like, cool, we can just assume it's going to be. But now there's like hard disagreeing evidence in this story. So maybe we can't assume that with each of these interactive novels, and we're going to have to figure it out on a case-by-case basis. It's probably what's going to happen. I'll tell you what, makes me a little frightened on what Escape the Pizzaplex is going to give us. Because that one's set in Security Breach, like proper. Before Security Breach, because there are workers at the Pizzaplex, but still close enough that it'll be a little bit more meaningful to the timeline than VIP was. So I don't know. We'll see. We can't assume anymore. I guess closing thoughts, because we're closing on 55 minutes on the recording. I'm sure we're closer to like 50 with all the stuff I had to cut out. But closing thoughts, I didn't have time to take questions. I guess if I didn't talk about like channel stuff for 10 minutes, we could have. Oops. Even still, it would have been 45, so who knows. Closing thoughts, really good book. I highly recommend you go get it and read it. Adrian Kress, you knocked it out of the park. The lore, dog, I don't know. I'll formulate my thoughts for Friday, because this week's video is definitely going to be on this book. It was going to be on the Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 trailer we got that showed possibly the prototype's full form in a silhouette, which is badass, but I guess not. I guess it's on this whack-ass book that we got to figure out. But I hope you liked Cozy Riley for the podcast today. And if you have questions, I wrote them. I took 4 questions. I'll talk about them next week. But if you have questions you want to answer on the podcast, feel free to send them to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. If you want to listen to my voice not sick, I literally just now uploaded Out of Stock. It's the Plush Trap Chaser audiobook. It's on Ridos. Link in the card if I remember. Probably won't, but you know where to find it. But yeah, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.